Welcome to Mind Your Mental Health channel. This is our 11th episode. So far we have done 10 episodes covering different aspects of the mind. In the last 2 episodes, we talked about conscious, preconscious and subconscious mind. We also talked about ego, superego. They belong to psychoanalytical concept developed by Sigmund Freud. In this episode, we are going to talk about another concept, transactional analysis, which is developed by a Canadian psychiatrist, Eric Berne. This work was done in 1950s, and it is a very popular concept. So he called the concept as transactional analysis. Let us see what is transactional analysis. Transaction and analysis are common words. We use it very often. Transaction means the exchange between two or more persons. Analysis is analyzing that. So exchange can be anything. It can be money, it can be a document, it can be goods, it can be anything, and it can also be a word or communication from one person to other person. So Eric Berne theorized that this communication helps us to understand the minds of the people and which can be used to treat the mental health problem. Let us see what happens in a transaction. Suppose I am walking in a park and I see a friend and I recognize and then say hi. And then the friend can respond by saying hi, how are you? This is a unit of transaction, where I have said hi and my friend responded hi and then said how are you. So there are two functions here. One is called transaction stimuli. When I said hi to a friend, I am sending a stimulus. This stimulus elicits a response from my friend. That is called transaction response. So any transaction will have these two components, stimulus and response. Again, stimulus and response, it goes on depending on the situation, the topic what we are discussing, and the individual makeup of each person who is involved in these transactions. So this transaction reflects the person's thinking, perception, feeling, and the experiences. So if we go further, Eric Berne theorized that there are 3 ego states in a person. He called it as parent ego state, adult ego state, and child ego state. So my response or my stimulus or my communication depends on my 3 ego states and which ego state with which I am responding or receiving. Let me explain a little more about these ego states. Parent ego state is that state develops early part of our life, probably first 5-6 years of life. It mainly constitutes our parents' responses, our parents' reactions, and our parents' feelings, all those things, what we experience from the parents. Whatever they told us to do, whatever they said, whatever appreciation they gave, everything forms the parent ego state. So it is there in us as we develop. It remains with us. So first 5-6 years of experience. Sometimes we can also extend it to the other significant people in our life. Probably when we go to the school teachers, all those things constitute the parent ego state. Next comes the child ego state. Child ego state predominantly involves child's reaction or child's response at that point in time. During the first 5-6 years time, when parent sent me a stimuli, I responded with my own thinking, my own feelings, everything. So that constitutes child ego state. So all of us have a set of parent ego state and a set of child ego state. Parent ego state reflects what we perceived from parent, what they communicated, how they communicated, what happened in that early formative years. Child ego state constitutes how I reacted as a child. What did I do to that stimuli? When my father asked me to do certain things, did I do or did I react? Did I rebel? All those things constitute the child ego state. In between these two, we have an adult ego state. This is what we developed over a period of time, all through our childhood, adolescent, adulthood stage. This is more rational. This adult ego state is more here and now. Their responses are very measured, balanced, and they can be very respectful and thoughtful. So this adult ego state is the one which is more rational, which we developed over a period of time. If you recall my previous episode on ego, superego, almost all these three, parent, adult, child, correspond to ego and superego of the psychoanalytical concept. So we have transactional stimuli, we have transactional response, and we have within ourselves, in our mind, we have ego, parent ego state, adult ego state, child ego state. So for convenience purpose, it is called PAC. So there are two individuals interacting. When I say interacting, I mean everything: verbal communication, bodily language, expression, feeling, facial expression, everything together. We are talking about holistically the communication, not only the verbal. So here is a PAC, parent, adult, child. Here is one PAC, parent, adult, child. So when the stimuli comes from this, goes to this person can receive it either in adult state or parent ego state or child ego state and respond accordingly. So I'll give an example. Suppose a person asks another person, "Where is my watch? I don't seem to be finding it. Where did you see anywhere?" So it's an adult level response, asking or telling the person, "I couldn't find my watch. Do you know where it is? Or can you find it out for me?" So this is the adult level response, goes to another person who can receive it as an adult level and say, "Oh, I saw the watch on the dining table." Now you can pick it up from there. Or it can go to the parent ego state and response will be like a parent from the experience what they had from the parent ego state. So the response will be, parental response will be, when will you learn to manage your things? You always keep searching. You misplace everything everywhere. And last minute you hurry things. So it shouldn't be happening. You should be more responsible. So this is the parent who is responding to that adult stimuli. That is a parent response. Okay, let us see if the same adult stimuli goes to the child. Child ego state can respond, "I'm quite busy. Why are you always troubling me? Don't you understand? I'm quite busy. Don't have any other work to search for your watch." And the response can be quite distressing, or they might say, I'm suffering because of these things. And that could be a child response. "Why are you asking me? I'm a small boy. Now, why are you doing this to me?" So one adult response can elicit three types of response: parent, adult, and child. This is how the transaction happens. This is how the simple transaction can have an inner meaning, or there is something in the mind which drives these transactions. Okay, so we have seen what is stimulus and what is response, and we also seen three different states and how they interact. What happens in the transaction. Erikman also conceptualized that the transaction can be in different forms. He called it in three different forms. One is complementary transaction. Other one is ulterior transaction. The third one is crossed transaction. Complementary transaction is one where transaction runs in a parallel line. I said PAC, yeah. If the parent sends a stimuli which reaches the child and child responds as a child to the parent, the line runs parallel. Adult to adult, if you draw a line, stimulus goes here and then adult responds. The line is parallel. These kind of responses are called complementary responses. Don't be misled by the term complementary. It need not be always pleasant or positive. It can also be negative response. But what we are talking about is parallel response. So one ego state is asking, other ego state is giving. The responses are matching and parallel. Okay. Then let's go on to the ulterior transaction. Ulterior transaction will have two lines. One line visible, other line not visible or invisible. So what it means is I give a response, I give a stimuli. Outwardly, it looks like a simple response, but it might have an inner meaning or it might carry some more things with that. For example, my son comes and asks me, I want to start a business and this is a business I want to do. And what do you think, Daddy? So shall I go ahead? So it's a very adult stimuli. I might give him a response at two levels. So one is I tell him, oh, that's very good, that's very progressive, and it will be very helpful. It will be helpful for your future. You should go ahead. And then I might also add few things. Oh, but you need to be careful about the past experiences, what happened in your last business, and this business seems to be a little more taxing. It might involve a lot more focus, and you need to be spending more time and spending more energy on these projects. Yeah, what do you think? So I'm giving two responses here. And the first response is go ahead. But that comes with the tag of kind of a warning him. So adult and then a little bit of parent coming in. So these are the different transaction, what we called as ulterior transaction. Cross transaction is one where the example I gave you earlier. Somebody is asking, where is my watch? And the adult level response is crossed by a parent level response, telling the person, you're always churching, you don't take responsibility, you need to be a responsible person. Then the transaction can be crossed because adult level stimulus is expecting adult level response, but you're giving some other response which might go to the child level. So it will be crossed, adult to adult, but response will be parent to child. So this is a cross response. So this is how they analyze the transactional, but it's not as simple as I said. It's a very complex process. They need to understand the person, each person and their background, their mental makeup. There are many things goes into that. And this can be used in many aspects of psychology. Now it can be used in management setup, it can be used in educational setup, in educational psychology and behavioral psychology. It can also used as a therapy. Eric Berne developed this as a therapy, what we call TA therapy or transaction analysis therapy, which mainly focuses on transaction between the individual. That transaction comes from their mental makeup, what they experience, what they gain, and how they feel. All those things is embedded in that transaction. It is not simple transaction between one individual to other individual, but all the transaction has different meaning or has different connotations. So that's how we use TA to treat some of the psychological disorders. In this episode, we discuss about transaction analysis. We explained the transaction, what it is, and we talked about transactional stimuli, transaction response, and we also talked about three states of the ego: parent, adult, and child. And we talked about types of transaction where it can be complementary to each other, or it can be ulterior transaction, or it can be a cross transaction. I also said this can be effectively used to treat some of the condition, for example, anxiety, some of the condition we can treat with transactional analysis. It can also be used for self-development. Probably after listening to that, just try to think, recall some of the transaction you had, try to fit in to your mind. How did I respond? Or pick up one difficult conversation you had with a friend and then analyze yourself, not your friend. Analyze yourself and say, how did I respond? You asked me this, I said this. Where did this come from? Was it an adult response? Was it a child response? Because it was a child response or adult parent response, that's why the conversation went a little bit negative. Think about it. Probably you might be able to understand some of what I said. So in the next episode, we will talk about another important concept in psychology and psychiatry, that is behavioral psychology, or it is also known as behaviorism. We will talk about in the next episode. Thank you for being with us.